Hello YouTube. Welcome to this video all about the great books, and this is the first of many videos I'm going to make on this topic. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of things I want to talk about, sketched out and planned out, but you might think for this first video I would start with what the great books are, but I'm not going to do that. I think there are many great videos already on YouTube on this topic, videos I've watched, videos that persuaded me to walk down this path, to take this route, and it changed my life in many, many ways. And I'll make more videos in the future about specifically why that is and what it happened and what it's doing for me. But for this one, I really just want to focus on, why it spoke to me, why the concept of a great books education spoke to me. And I hope that will be interesting for some people and perhaps encourage you also to explore this in more detail, because it might be right for you. I'll start with a summary though. I'll give you a quick summary of what it is I'm talking about. So when I'm talking about the great books, I'm talking about this concept, this idea of a great books education. And the basis of the idea is that anyone can educate themselves by simply reading the greatest works of a civilization, the greatest works of philosophy, the greatest works of history, of literature, of science, and that this process in itself and reflecting on it and ideally doing it with other people and over the course of your life can bring great benefits to you and to shape you into an educated person. Now, and in this case, in my particular case, I'm talking about this collection right here. Okay, this collection is the Britannica Great Books of the Western World collection. It starts back here with Freud. No, Freud is down there. It starts back here with the Iliad by Homer and goes all the way down there to the 20th century and Freud. I could go into more detail about what's in the collection, why it's there, and these are all interesting questions in themselves, but that's the core idea. You read the books yourself, draw your own conclusions, and yeah, you learn from it. So, and as I said, there are some great videos in the links. I'll put the links in the description where people can go into more detail about that idea. But why did it speak to me? Why did that happen? Well, I have to go back in time, first of all, to how I discovered it, because it was by pure accident. And actually, maybe before we go back in time, I should say, I am someone who loves learning. I've always loved learning. I've always loved sharing that with other people. I think that in many ways, I've always felt that just learning in itself has value. Acquiring knowledge in itself is a valuable way to spend your time. I've always been notorious for having many books, or, like most people who love books, buying more books than you need because it's aspirational to buy books that you intend to read for the future. Unfortunately, we don't always get there. Yeah, I've always loved learning. I've always had too many Wikipedia tabs open. I'm that kind of person. And I studied history at university. And yeah, history covers a lot of these things, but I've always, even though history is quite a broad topic in itself, I've always sort of ventured out of it, and I didn't really see any need to stop myself from reading literature. I got into languages in my 20s. I should have really started that earlier. I should have done that. That was a missed opportunity, but that's what happened. And you might think, well, the logical conclusion that, I did become a teacher eventually. I became an English teacher, and that has evolved into all the things I teach now. But that wasn't a straight path, and you might think, well, the logical conclusion for someone like me should have been become an academic, become a historian or something similar. And honestly, when I looked at that path and tried to understand how you navigate it, it did not appeal to me, because it was so hyper-focused, and it was so, you had to specialize. And I've just taking history as the example, I have applied for or almost applied for so many master's courses to start that path up many times, and every time I either didn't apply or I pulled back because I realized it was too narrow for me. And I've always felt this way. And what happened was a few years ago. Now that's the way I felt. So now let's jump forward to a few years ago as I'm teaching English and I'm kind of continuing to learn about many things, still trying to work out my way through what I'm going to do in terms of where I'm going to take this job and what I want to do with my time in the future. I always had this question, and I came across Professor Alexander Arguelles' videos and YouTube channel, and I'm going to mention him a lot in this. He's a professor who has dedicated his life to studying languages, and his channel is a fantastic resource, and you should go and have a look at that. I came across one of his videos, and then that led me down the rabbit hole of his old website and lots of old posts that he used to make many, many years ago online, all about language learning and promoting reading great works of literature. And that's where I discovered this whole concept of the great books education. So this is not a new idea. This collection here that I have, these books are older than me, and these are a later printing. This series was released in the 1950s, and the editors were trying to, or their stated aim, should I say, was to promote this idea of great books education, that it would be and should be available for everyone who wants it, and that was one of the driving ethoses of the educational program they were promoting. And I'd never heard of it. I was shocked that I'd never heard of it, quite frankly. I thought, as he was talking about it, everything just clicked for me. It was like, yeah, this is the logical conclusion. For someone who likes to learn and likes learning about a range of things, you should do that. And yeah, why not read the original classic works? Go right back to the source, read those, and discuss them. It sounds so obvious when I say it, and I don't know why it never came to me, but I guess that also says something about the educational process that I went through. I mean, I don't know. I've been very lucky overall with my educational experience. I mean, I haven't received the quote unquote top education from the top universities or the top schools, but it definitely hasn't been terrible either. I would say probably quite standard. But when we say standard, I mean, what does that mean? Well, as an example, I have a degree in history, and we never read Herodotus on that course. And if you don't know, Herodotus is, it was a Greek historian who wrote the first history book, or the oldest surviving history book from the Western tradition. I think it was mentioned in on a PowerPoint in one of the first year undergraduate courses. We never read that, and we did whole modules on historiography, on the evolution of history as a discipline. But we talked about the evolution, we talked about the ideas of it and what modern historians have written about those ideas and that evolution. But we didn't have to read the original works, which to me, even just samples of Herodotus would have been valuable, but we didn't do that. And another example kind of related to this is that we did a lot. I mean, I studied 20th century. A lot of my history degree was the 20th century, so it was US history and Soviet Union. So you would think then, I mean, if you're going to talk about the 20th century, what text from this collection is perhaps the most important text that you need to know about and need to discuss? It's down that end, down there. And if you haven't guessed, I'll give you a moment to guess. What would you think? I mean, for me, it's no question. It's obviously Karl Marx. It's obviously the Communist Manifesto. And it was the underlying thing of so much of the stuff that I study as part of that degree. And we were never expected to read it, ever. And looking back, I don't understand why we didn't read it. Much less the suggestion that you should learn German to read it in the original, because that in itself would be a valuable activity for someone studying humanities. That's a whole other thing. That was never discussed. That was never suggested. So, yeah, looking back on all of that, once I heard about this great books concept and the idea behind it, and what it could, hang on, I want to say that what it could do for you, the idea, its stated aim of helping you to become a more rounded, educated person. And I looked back and I thought, I looked back at what I'd done and I thought it's just obvious, like that's what we should have been doing. If we're studying these topics, we should have been engaging with these sources. And another great example would be the fact that we barely touched the ancient world. It's like the ancient world in classics is kind of this separate discipline within history or within literature that's separate. It's separate. And why? Why is that? And that's why it spoke to me. It seemed like this type of education, this pursuit would be a valuable one. And it ticked a lot of the boxes for things I was interested in. And on top of that, there's another thing actually about the professor's ideas on his website. So the final thing I want to say is that he laid out on his old website, and he is a big proponent of this idea of his, of the discipline of polyliteracy. And what is polyliteracy? So this is the idea that you can develop a high degree of skill in various languages so you can then read the great works of that language, and that in itself is a valuable discipline to pursue. And that's something he promotes. On top of reading the greatest works of, in this case, Western civilization, the acts of striving to read those works eventually in their original languages. In the case of this collection, it could be French, it could be German, it could be Italian, Latin and Greek. That's the majority of it there. But also maybe as part of your development into kind of striving to understand the humanities in a broader way, why not strive to read works, to learn a language from another civilization eventually and read their works, like Arabic or Chinese or Sanskrit, for example. And again, so that really fired me up in my mind. That was like, wow, I've liked languages now for many years, but now I've got another great purpose, another great reason to pursue studying them so I can read great works in that language. And that was it, really. That's why it spoke to me. I could talk about so many more things on this topic, and I do want to, and I will make those videos in the future. But right now, my little battery on the camera is flashing red, and that's a good place to stop it. So I hope you found this interesting, and I'm curious to know if this is your first time hearing about the great books. If you've stumbled across this video by chance, leave a comment and tell me if anything I said spoke to you. Perhaps it did, if you're still here watching the end, and why, or if you are someone who already pursues this goal of learning languages or reading great works of literature, leave your comment as well. Let me know what is it about this pursuit that speaks to you. Why did you start? I'd love to hear it. So have a great day, and we'll speak soon.